So you have kind of a deck that cares about land types and getting some benefit from all 5 colors of matchup against a deck devoid of color. That one was an intentional pun. Do you like the Zoo side or the Tron side?
This is one where I think I am inclined to sort of go on the Eldrazi side of things, where normally Domain Zoo is, if it's fighting against a creature deck, it's trying to go a little bit bigger than the opponent. So this is a deck that has seen a lot of success whenever Boros Energy was a great deck, for example, because you just play a Scion of Draco, and it's pretty hard to apply pressure with more efficient threats into that. Unfortunately, Eldrazi Tron is sort of the pressure that says there is always a bigger boss at the end.
Yes. And this is what you like to see when you open up starting a tournament here. We have 2 decks that have some kind of fundamental aspect to them, the 5-color deck versus the deck that's trying to get more than 1 mana from its lands. And the first turn has both players doing their thing. You have Roy opening up on that turn 0 ley line of the Guild Pact, and Robbins opening up with Ugin's Labyrinth set up with the make 2 mana, and also Eldrazi Temple is a second land. So the mana could get really carried away really quickly on that side of the table.
And this is a pretty interesting Soul Land Go.
I don't know if I feel good or horrified on the other side of the table.
Oh yeah, if you're in Roy's seat, this is the point where I think you're getting pretty nervous and going, oh my god, what do you mean every spell in their hand costs more than 4?
Here is Scion of Draco. That's going to be the quote-unquote combo with the ley line, and Robbins is going to push the mana even more. Warping Whale makes an Eldrazi Scion.
All right, I think that just implies that Robbins is going to cast a 7-mana spell every turn for the rest of time.
Sure looks like it, as Eldrazi Temple is land number 3. Okay, so this is not a 7-mana spell per se. Karn the Great Creator is where he will start. Thinking about whether to go up or down. It's going to be down. Access that wish board, -2 to find an artifact from the sideboard.
So in a lot of ways, this just speaks to basically building towards something where this Karn demands action, right?
Yes.
So we're going to see Robbins pick up a card that is going to play later into the game and is going to buy some time. And Ensnaring Bridge the Git, that I believe is specifically the one from Lord of the Rings, Tales of Middle-earth.
Yes. I'm trying to recall the exact flavor, what the rename is on that one. But Ensnaring Bridge is the card anyway. I'm going to get stumped on a lot of that stuff. Card text, though, that's important. If that bridge gets down, creatures with more power than cards in Robin's hand will not be able to attack. Right now, though, that Scion of Draco, it's good to go. And it's actually attacking Robbins. Forget about your Karn.
And, you know, this is Roy identifying, okay, well, it sounds like attacking your Karn is good for you, so I can't do that.
And Lightning Bolt will clean it up cleanly as well.
Lightning Bolt really clocking in this morning.
Love it.
Came in at 9 o'clock, working boots on.
4 copies in this deck.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, let's see if Robbins can do something more explosive. Still a lot of cards in hand with that Ensnaring Bridge equation. The Ugin's Labyrinth helps a little bit there. Sire of 7 Deaths was a card exiled to that on turn 1. And here is Thought-Knot Seer.
And notably, that's Cavern of Souls that Robbins played. There are 2 main deck copies of Consigned to Memory in Roy's deck, so this does matter. Yeah. Even though it is a Zoo deck, there are more copies of Consigned to Memory out of this deck to just be a counter spell in a lot of instances.
Cavern of Souls is definitely a standout option for colorless decks for the reason you mentioned for these Eldrazi decks. And takes a look at a couple of cards that can both answer the Thought-Knot Seer, Leyline Binding, and Tribal Flames. And the Seer will exile the Leyline Binding. Eldrazi Scion sacrificed, and here is Ensnaring Bridge. And now Robbins just with 1 card left in hand, I believe.
Yep.
Gonna be tough to attack from here.
All right, and 16, also a really high life total to have to just burn through. There are points with this Domain Zoo deck where if, say, Robbins were at 8 or 10, it's pretty believable that we could see Roy just actually top deck out of this one.
Even that 16th point, you see the face-up Tribal Flames, 3 does 15. Like, we're a long way from that.
Right.
But we're a long way from that, and it's still 1 shy.
Right, exactly. That's something where I don't want to say funny exactly, but there is a sort of degree of, all right, It is a bit unlikely to draw a couple more Tribal Flames, but it feels like you know where you're going. But in this spot, you need specifically 2 more Tribal Flames and some help. Notably, another Leyline Binding could check the Ensnaring Bridge in a big way.
Yes, yeah, so there are 3 more Leyline Bindings in the main deck. So it's nice to have access to some answers. A lot of decks just would not be able to answer a permanent like that on the battlefield.
Though, somewhat ironically, Sire of Seven Deaths hiding under Ugin's Labyrinth. Even in the world where Roy gets out from under the bridge, there's something big looming.
Yes. Here's a way to start making those chip shots. It's a Flage for Roy.
That's not bad. That's 6.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we only need 1 more Tribal Flames.
Yeah, this game, it's closer than it may appear.
Right. I have to admit it. I wasn't just setting that up.
Here's an Urza's Tower and Expedition Map. So an aspect of these colorless big mana decks is oftentimes Expedition Map, of course, it can find your lands to tap for more than 1 mana. I'm looking for a utility land in the spread here. It looks like all mana generating lands. That Cavern of Souls is maybe like the weirdest find.
Yep. Yeah, at this point, in a lot of ways, this is just signaling, no, I think that if I get to cast my spells, I will be fine, so that's all I'm going to put points into.
Here is the escape of Flage from Roy, Robbins to 10. We know about the 1 Tribal Flames in hand.
All right, Sire of Seven Deaths picked up. Expedition Map cracked.
Expedition Map is kind of cracked, yeah. Oh, you meant he was using it.
It's explicitly cracked here.
Another Eldrazi Temple. Not going to be difficult at all for Robbins to cast that Sire of Seven Deaths. That does kind of beg an interesting question. Is there any way for Robbins to remove his own Ensnaring Bridge?
I was thinking that. I think it involves something like Karn the Great Creator. Finding a way to have it die or, say, get animated and then blow it up with something else. It's ugly.
Yes. Convoluted, if possible.
There are admittedly worlds where a Karn the Great Creator off the top could represent something like Sundering Titan, which is really nice against a domain deck.
Yeah, that is true. Here's a really good find, though. Thought-Knot Seer is going to answer that 1 Tribal Flames we knew was in hand, and there was not a second copy. So Roy's got to figure something else out. That plan got a lot tougher.
I saw 3 get tapped, and we know now it was a cycle, but for a second, the way it got tapped, I thought it was going to be another Flage.
Yeah, just a cycle of Indotha Triumph. Good to have a little bit of churn. We're still at a window where Leyline Binding would be great. That is just Ragavan, though.
All of a sudden asking myself if this Ragavan might ever get to randomly attack.
Maybe. Less inviting now that the Sire has shown up.
Yeah, lifelink creature on the table. I would guess Ragavan is going to stick to pilfering at home for a little bit.
Second Leyline of the Guild Pact. Not too thrilling. I think that we gotta buckle up for a long one from here. We head back to Robbins.
Ensnaring Bridge, addition to the format from 8th edition.
8th edition. Oh yeah, here's Karn the Great Creator. You were mentioning this is the one that could allow Robbins to get fancy and find a way to end the game.
Ooh.
Here's -2. We're gonna take a look at the sideboard.
My intuition is we're just going to see a snapped off Liquimetal coating or something like that. Maybe Torpor Orb, because that turns off Flage.
Yeah, so there's a lot of just utility. You're mentioning those cards. They're not awe-inspiring. There's no, game winner. We're well past the point where you used to be able to find Mycosynth Lattice, for example.
Sure.
So I'll just kind of list off the options. There's 2 Disruptor Flutes, 2 Relic of Progenitus, 2 Torpor Orb. That Ensnaring Bridge is already there. Extinguisher Battleship, Grafdigger's Cage, Liquid Metal Coating. You were talking about that as an option. The Sundering Titan. That's possibly the most appealing one, the biggest effect anyway. Liquid Metal Coating is going to be a find. There's also a Stone Brain, Trinisphere, Vexing Bauble. There's a Walking Ballista. The thing about that that could be the way that Robbins ends the game, but there's no rush.
Right. This is a spot where, in a lot of ways, Robbins is more or less just trying to stay alive, which sounds funny given the battlefield, but Karn the Great Creator is truly a never-ending inevitability engine. Oh, was that a bolt? Oh.
Sure looks like it. From Roy's seat, you definitely want to be thinking about that 10-point life total, but this is open deckless. Roy knows that there's some scary stuff in the sideboard, and yeah, Lightning Bolt's gotta go for the Karn here.
I think you have to take out the Karn. You just know that is the way that Robbins wins from here, is eventually finding a Karn.
Yes. There's a basic swamp. There's a basic swamp and a basic waste in Robbins' deck.
Yeah, in this spot, you generally want to have a couple of basics, so something like White Orchid Phantom doesn't totally cold you, and you don't care that much what it is, but a swamp can do the painful part of Dismember sometimes.
Yes, yeah, 2 Dismembers in the deck. And some Drago. Players continue to look for the same thing. Roy wants any way to go upstairs and get out of this game before Robbins, largely looking for that Karn the Great Creator, and presumably walking Ballista is his way out.
Glaring Fleshraker is another way that Robbins could actually start dealing some damage. Roy is unfortunately at approximately a gazillion, though.
It would take some doing.
Of course.
Multiple Fleshrakers, you can get something going. Doorkeeper Thrall. There's 4 main deck copies of that.
Well, that turns off Glaring Fleshraker's damage.
All right. Back to the drawing board.
As well as Sundering Titans.
Yeah. No more one-sided Armageddons.
Roy drawing a lot of gas this game.
Yes. There's a lot.
It's funny where it says gas, but Scion of Draco is different than a land.
Yes. Yeah, these are spells like I've registered a lot of modern decks that are dead to both sides of the battlefield here.
Sure.
Devourer of Destiny is going to go to work, get rid of one of those ley lines.
Ugin, Eye of the Storms would also be a pretty nice get for Robbins here.
Yeah, there are 3 copies of that. Yeah, Robbins has a decent clip of cards that can be used to end the game. And here Roy is just going to fire off a Lightning Bolt. Robbins to 7.
And there are some reasons why Roy is pretty interested in just spending mana here. Flage is pretty mana hungry and is likely one of the ways that Roy gets out of this game.
Here's a Flooded Strand and a tap of 4 for another ley line. I got excited. I don't know why. I don't know what I thought was going to happen.
How about land number 11?
How about it? You were seeing the long-standing impact of 8th edition on the modern format. And Snaring Bridge is not a card you see nearly as much these days. This was a fundamental aspect of the Lantern control deck that had its day in the sun some years ago. Karn the Great Creator has wished for this card plenty of times, I'm sure. War of the Spark definitely allowing the card to maintain some prominence in the format. Mindstone, redraw.
That counts.
Mindstone, draw 1 card. Big tap. Is it Ugin?
Oh.
It's Ugin.
And I believe this also gains life when you roll it up. Devastating for Roy.
Absolutely. So the cast trigger on that Ugin. This card does a lot. Immediately it's going to exile that second ley line. +2 draws a card and gains 3 life. So that's 3 life. That's going to be narrowing Roy's margins every time that's activated. Drawing a card is going to be increasing Robbins' margins. And the Ugin also threatens to close the game in its own way. You can go and find your other non-land cards if you get your colorless cards if you get to that -11 ultimate ability.
All right, game 2 time. I really appreciate that game how early on we see Karn the Great Creator, I think a lot of people have the temptation to just look for cards they can play immediately whenever they play with that card. But instead, Robbins knew, all right, in this matchup, what is important is the card Ensnaring Bridge. So I'm going to get this and try and pave the way for it through a possible Consign or Stubborn Denial or what have you with a Thought-Knot Seer, and then slam this Ensnaring Bridge, and the game is effectively over.
Yeah, Robbins definitely demonstrating an awareness of that inevitability.
Yes.
That Thought-Knot Seer taking the Leyline Binding over the Tribal Frames, also really reinforcing that game plan and settling in for the long games in that way. As players are going to reach for their sideboards, both players had kind of some ideal things to start off. It's not necessarily clear to me which player is going to be advantaged, but let's take a look at the sideboards and see who is going to gain more. So on the Domain Zoo side of things, Roy maybe needs some help, but there are some good options here.
Right, we're seeing Consign to Memory. I think Damning Sphere is something you could also think about. It's just making it so lands are not very good at tapping for a bunch of mana. Stubborn Denial is a card that can be pretty good here because a lot of the scariest cards, as weird as this is, tend to be non-creatures. I think a lot of it is going to come down to what you think Robbins is doing and what he's trying to hang his hat on. I don't really think you can afford to go up too much higher on it, but these Wear Tears, these are something that are basically the Shatter mode is absolutely crucial in this matchup. Having more ways to check Ensnaring Bridge is just going to be massive.
Yeah, that's really what he needed for a good stretch of the game in Game 1, so that makes sense. On Robbins' side of thing, we talked about a lot of these cards in the game. That's because the access is always there with the Karn the Great Creator Wishboard. There's multiple copies of some stuff. Is there any of this stuff maybe making its way into the main deck here?
I can see some worlds where we see something like Glaring Shrieker get trimmed on because I don't think it's at its best in this sort of matchup, and having something like a Relic of Progenitus can give you a little bit of velocity, maybe check a Flage. The first copy of that making its way into the main deck would make some sense to me. I don't think we're going to see very much past that.
Yeah, makes sense to me. So we're playing Modern here this weekend at the Regional Championship. We're at SCG Con Houston. There's a lot going on this weekend. If you're interested in checking out just such a con, great news. Another event coming up next weekend, SCG Con Baltimore. You can check out the Spotlight Series. That's going to be Spider-Man. Some standard action in the main event, and plenty to do outside of that as well.
Right, I love Baltimore. One of my favorite cities to visit, specifically the Inner Harbor area near the convention center, is something that I've spent a lot of time around. The Little Italy is just, I want to say, half a mile-ish away or something. You have some very homey, nice restaurants around the area. I love every time I have a reason to go to Baltimore for any sort of event.
Great city, great event. Find the details on that at starcitygames.com/SCGCon. As players are looking at opening hands, I believe we are underway with sevens as Roy's going to open up on the turn 1 Ragavan. No ley line, but this is a great start.
Right, this is the kind of thing where, especially when you're on the play, you know this is going to be either connecting or it's going to eat something like a Dismember, which kind of feels like connecting in its own way.
Right. That's most of a Tribal Flames.
Right, 1 mana, 4 points. Back in my day, we spent 2 mana for Boros Charm and didn't get a card out of their hand.
I spent 2 mana for Flame Rift, and I also took 4.
Uphill, both ways, in the lava. Like, it was a whole thing. Oh. Speaking of Witchmember.
Yeah, Ragavan's going to connect. It's going to exile Dismember. Not anything Roy can utilize, but now nothing that Robbins can utilize, as that is going to be permanently exiled. And
getting the treasure also quite relevant. These decks are a bit more mana hungry whenever they don't have that early leyline.
Roy will shock in Temple Garden as land number 2 down to 15. Most of the way to Domain with Steam Vents as the first land. And there is where on Expedition Map. This is stuff you dream of. Okay, but I think Robbins has natural Tron. Well, you don't dream of that so much. Incredible. Incredible. Yeah, second Tron land is land number 2, and you do see those white bordered Tron lands in the holding for the hand. I remember back in the day, you would see Tron opponents mulligan super aggressively to just have turn 3 Tron and expect things to work out from there. So when they keep a 6 or 7, you kind of groan and go, oh, they have it. Especially when they have it this way, it's so strong. Ooh, so land number 3 for Roy's Arena of Glory. With that treasure, you mentioned that mattering. That's going to be an extra for double territorial Kavu with haste. They are 4/4s, there's no swamp, but that's 10 damage coming across.
And this is that type of game we were talking about last game, where it's so different. We saw Robbins get the bridge down, went all the way up at, what was it, 16 life? Now, Robbins is down to 8, and you can really feel the heat under your collar when you're down at 8 life.
Yes. Kavu is also going to clean up the hand a little bit. You see Roy doing some rummaging. Here's the 10 damage. Regavan will trigger a Thought-Knot Seer. That one's not going to be castable.
Leyline of the Guild Pack does not help with colorless sources.
No.
Nor does Treasure.
Correct. It would have been nice if there was an ability to cast it, but it's still nice to have this much damage here. But all it does, you mentioned that natural
Whoa.
Tron. 1, 2, 7. Get rid of those threats. So that arena was exerted. That'll stay tapped as we head back to Roy. So with Robbins at 10, you know, we're looking at a little bit more than double try. Actually, at 8.
Okay, right.
Excuse me.
I was kind of thinking to myself, I'm not totally sure I trust the players, but the players trust that they're at 8 too.
Yes. The 8 is firmly double Tribal Flames, and Wooded Footfills can also get the full domain here.
And I think Roy had a bunch of reactive stuff in hand. I think I saw a Leyline Binding, for example. Really needs to find more pressure. I think was expecting to play around something like Ensnaring Bridge instead of All Is Dust.
Yes. Yeah, All This Dust, there's one copy.
And that's all it takes.
Yes. Just try it.
Look, we've seen the one Bolt be good. We've now seen the one All Is Dust be good.
You put the one copy in your deck to draw it sometimes.
I'm always saying this.
Second Urza's Tower for Robbins.
Looks like Disruptor Flute in the hand.
Okay.
One of the boxes that Robbins needs to be able to check is Flage. So just that amount of taxing is something that I can imagine a world where it ends up playing out just really punching above its weight class.
Yeah, I believe that. Just a pass, as here is a fetch from Roy. Passing with 10 mana, I can't say reads as a sign of strength.
This is sort of the reason that a bunch of Tron decks used to mulligan so aggressively, is you know the top of your library is stronger on average than your opponent's. So if you just have Tron, the rest of it is kind of details. It's hard to mulligan. Natural Tron Expedition map, All Is Dust.
Yes, and the All Is Dust. That clocked in for some real work.
Exactly.
So here's Lush Portical. Roy is going to surveil. Give that one a think. You mentioned the hand, likely some reactive elements. It's Leyline Binding, Arid Mesa.
Oof.
Not a lot doing. Not a lot doing. Got to imagine Roy's looking at some marginal effect here as he really considers this surveil. And here is Disruptor Flute, still on the end step for Robbins.
Okay, I mean, this also is an okay check for Arena of Glory.
Sure, yeah, turn off the non-mana activated abilities.
In a lot of ways, I even would guess that this might have just been we see Robbins trying to get something like Glaring Fleshraker out of the deck, where it trades down on mana, is not really that good at blocking a lot of the time.
So there is the land for Roy. Here is Flage. It'll go upstairs. Robbins to 5. We'll get confirmation, I hope, on what that flute named. Certainly not making Flage cost 3 more mana. You mentioned Arena of Glory could very well have been the name.
And we saw a pause with that Flage on the battlefield. Some question on if maybe there is either the Kozilek's Command or the bluff of it.
Oh, there's the reality. Here's Kozilek's Command.
X equals 6.
Yikes.
Holy. My intuition is this is scry a gazillion, exile a gazillion from graveyard.
Definitely makes sense to get that Flage out. Yeah, as you see, Robbins reach for the graveyard. Yeah, exile 6 of those cards, just leave you with some lands. And here is the Scry 6.
Okay, Glaring Fleshraker still in deck.
See a Devourer of Destiny.
And when you scry this much, you end up in a position where you are mapping out multiple draw steps at the same time in a way that's pretty interesting. If there were more going on in the battlefield, I can imagine worlds where we saw Robbins say, put Fleshraker on top, stack a bunch of Mind Stones, and then cantrip them to make a bunch of tokens. Oh, Sundering Titan.
That one came in off the sideboard.
Holy.
And no leyline necessary. A lot of dual lands here. So 3 lands going to hit the graveyard there.
Oh.
And with Robbins at 5, that colded a lot of the output of a potential Tribal Flames.
That was crucial. At this point, I almost think we might see Arid Mesa get something like Indatha Triome just to keep Tribal Flames live.
Yeah, and there is the Indatha Triome. And the Sundering Titan does make quick work of the rest of the game. It's a 7-10. All right, so we'll see what Roy can do about this.
Oh, imagine Leyline Binding.
I was going to say, I
Titan.
spotted the Leyline Binding in hand, but that Sundering Titan, when it leaves the battlefield, you can kiss the rest of your lands goodbye.
All right, there's the Fleshraker. And you know, this card does make chump blockers.
Well, it makes chump blockers that also just shortens the clock.
Yeah, you're totally right.
Here's Sundering Titan for 7. Mind Stone did trigger that Fleshraker, so Roy going down to 8. So any colorless spell, if the battlefield stands, will be lethal for next turn as the Mind Stone is cracked.
1 in the pool.
Eldrazi's Temple. Here goes the second Mind Stone.
None in the pool.
And it looks like Disruptor Flute number 2 is picked up. That'll trigger the Fleshraker. Roy to 7. Sundering Titan now lethal.
Oh. I have a feeling it's naming Tribal Flames.
Yeah, make it cost more.
Though, I guess Tribal Flames only matters if you draw another land anyway.
Leyline Binding on the new Disruptor Flute.
Okay.
But like you said, there's only 4 points of domain here. Roy, peels Arid Mesa. That's not going to do it. Rodrick Robbins going to pick up round 1 here at RC Houston with Eldrazi.